The market was bleeding red. Tickers collapsed in silence as the hum of computer fans filled the sterile trading floor. Michael Burry, a 34-year-old hedge fund manager with a glass eye and an unmatched mind, sat hunched in his dim office, lit only by screens. He wasn't shocked, he was waiting. While the world stared in disbelief at the crumbling pillars of Wall Street, Michael calmly refreshed Bloomberg terminals, watching numbers dive like birds falling from the sky. Months ago he had screamed into the void, but no one listened. Now the system was on fire. One bank after another, their facades cracking, debts erupting like landmines. He had seen it coming, every fracture, every flaw. He didn't bet against people. He bet against greed, against blind optimism, against the belief that housing prices could rise forever. As millions lost homes, pensions, futures, Michael Burry stood still, vindicated, hollow, and alone. The greatest financial collapse since the Great Depression had just begun, and he was one of the few who profited. But were no celebrations, no champagne, no shouts of victory. Only numbers. Falling, breaking, confirming what he knew all along. Before the storm, the signs were everywhere, just not where people were looking. Michael Burry wasn't a Wall Street insider. He wasn't chasing trends or high-speed trades. He was a doctor-turned-investor with a deep sense for patterns. The housing market looked perfect on the surface, but to him it was a deck of cards waiting for the wrong gust of wind. He wasn't loud or charismatic. He was awkward, solitary, and obsessive. And that's exactly why he saw it before anyone else. While Wall Street cheered every rise in home prices, he quietly peeled back the data. Adjustable rate mortgages, no-income loans, risky borrowers being bundled and sold like premium assets. He saw the truth, and it terrified him. Others saw profits. He saw a time bomb. They laughed when he bet against the banks. They said he didn't understand the system. But Michael Burry didn't need to win the argument, he just needed to be right. They called him crazy. Investors grew impatient. Friends vanished. The media ignored him. In the heart of his silence, Michael Burry dug deeper. Each layer of the mortgage-backed market he analyzed revealed more rot. He wasn't just betting on a hunch, he had built a mountain of proof. And yet, the louder he warned, the less they listened. He emailed, called, presented slide decks. No one cared. They were all making too much money. He watched with growing dread as Wall Street built its golden empire on lies. It was more than just numbers now. It was a moral rot, a sickness of willful blindness. And he was the outcast who dared to scream while others sang. The first deal he proposed was met with laughter. Credit default swaps on subprime mortgage bonds? No one had asked for that before. The bankers smiled. He was handing them money to bet on something they thought could never lose. But Michael didn't smile back. He signed contracts with Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and others. He knew they didn't believe him. And that was fine. Their arrogance became his opportunity. As he walked out of those boardrooms, he felt the weight of a war only he knew had begun. The fuse was lit. The world just didn't know it yet. Michael returned to his quiet office, surrounded by skepticism and silence. But in his mind, the countdown had started. Every passing month without a crash only added pressure to the spring. And he waited, not with hope but with grim certainty. He didn't pray to be right. He knew he was. And that was the scariest part of all. Long before Wall Street, Michael Burry was a child who saw the world differently. He grew up in San Jose, California, born into a quiet middle-class family. A childhood illness left him blind in one eye, and from that moment on, the world always looked a bit lopsided to him, literally and figuratively. While others played outside, Michael retreated into books, numbers, patterns. He didn't speak much. He didn't fit in. But he was brilliant. His mind wasn't loud, it was precise. He saw structures where others saw chaos, and inconsistencies where others saw comfort. Even as a boy, he noticed what didn't belong. That same instinct, That same discomfort with the obvious would one day shake the financial world. His pain became his lens, his silence became his armor. And from an early age, he developed a powerful habit. When everyone turned left, he looked right. Michael didn't dream of finance. He pursued medicine. He enrolled in Vanderbilt Medical School and excelled in his classes. But his fascination wasn't just with biology. It was with patterns, cause and effect, systems under stress. In the quiet hours between rotations, he began writing about stocks online. His posts weren't loud. They were surgical. He dissected companies like case studies, finding flaws others missed. What started as a hobby began to gain attention. Readers noticed he was almost always right. Eventually, so did investors. He never finished his medical residency. Instead, he made the most important pivot of his life. He left behind a white coat for a Bloomberg terminal. The man who once studied dying bodies would now diagnose dying markets. With just a small inheritance and no Wall Street experience, Michael Burry launched Scion Capital in 2000 from a modest office in Cupertino. The space was unremarkable, no marble floors, no glass towers, just focus and data. Within months he was beating the market. Year after year, even during downturns, his returns were astonishing. Investors took notice. Millions flowed in. But Burry remained unchanged. He wore the same clothes, ate from vending machines, avoided meetings. His strategy was clear. Deep research, no emotion, absolute conviction. While others watched trends, he dissected balance sheets. He wasn't managing a fund. He was performing surgery on the market. Michael wasn't just beating the market. He was redefining how to read it. He believed numbers told stories. A rise in short-term liabilities, a slight change in revenue lines, a pattern in bond yield curves, each was a whisper of truth. Investors didn't always understand him. Some called him eccentric. Others thought he was lucky. But Michael didn't care. He wasn't here for applause. He was here to find the truth in noise. In a world driven by hype, he relied on discipline. He didn't attend investor conferences. He didn't schmooze with analysts. He worked late, often alone, fueled by Diet Coke and algorithms. His edge wasn't speed. It was depth. The emotional weight was always there, beneath the surface. Michael carried the burden of being right in a world that celebrated being loud. He didn't seek fame, yet it chased him. Every success was met with more questions, more scrutiny. But his family kept him grounded. Despite his obsessive work, he was a father, a husband. He cherished time with his children, even if his mind never fully left the numbers. There was a quiet sadness in his brilliance, a man whose genius often cost him connection. But he never wavered. Because deep down Michael Burry wasn't betting to be rich. He was betting to be right. And the more resistance he faced, the more certain he became. It started with a spreadsheet. Michael Burry found something others didn't bother to see. Subprime mortgage tranches, layered debt bundles built on risky home loans, looked safe on the surface. But inside, they were rotting. Adjustable rates, no-doc loans, teaser interest rates that reset like time bombs. This wasn't a market. It was a trap. While analysts praised the rise in homeownership, Burry mapped default probabilities. The math was horrifying. Nearly 30% of these borrowers would collapse under rising rates. But the securities still carried IA ratings. Whoa. It was madness in a suit. Michael realized the entire foundation of global finance was built on the false promise that housing prices would never fall. That idea, he knew, would shatter violently. So he began preparing for a war, only he believed was real. Michael made a move so rare, banks didn't know how to price it. He requested credit default swaps on subprime mortgage bonds. In essence, he was buying insurance on something that hadn't yet burned. But he knew it would. The banks didn't question him. They laughed. To them, he was an eccentric fund manager, handing them millions in premiums. Easy money. They believed the housing market was eternal. But behind closed doors, Michael smiled. They had just built the weapon that would expose their arrogance. Every swap he bought was a vote against a lie. His conviction was total, even if it meant staking everything. As Michael placed more bets, the costs grew, both financially and emotionally. His investors didn't understand. Premiums were bleeding cash. "Why are we betting against housing?" they asked. "This makes no sense." But Michael didn't flinch. His data models, built over hundreds of hours, were too precise. He saw the future with brutal clarity. The more pressure they applied, the more distant he became. He stopped explaining. He locked redemptions. The walls closed in around him. And still, he didn't blink. He wasn't guessing. He was watching a fire already started, spreading under floorboards while everyone else danced above. Wall Street pushed back. Quietly, they began manipulating valuations. The swaps Michael had bought, suddenly, they weren't priced properly. Even as mortgage defaults climbed, the paper value of his positions stagnated. It made him look wrong. He knew what they were doing, buying time, distorting reality. If they could slow the crash, maybe they could escape it. But Michael refused to play. He fought every mark-to-model valuation with relentless fury. Emails, audits, legal threats. He was done being silent. They could smear him, stall him, but they couldn't stop what was coming. Outside, the world kept spinning. Real estate continued booming. Financial news anchors smiled through their teeth. Housing remained strong, they said. Mortgage brokers handed loans to anyone with a pulse. Construction surged. The American dream expanded like a bubble in the sun. And Michael sat in his quiet office, watching it all. He wasn't angry. He was stunned. The delusion was complete. He watched everyday people take on loans they couldn't understand for homes they couldn't afford, while Wall Street packaged those risks as treasures. A parade toward ruin. And no one, not the regulators, not the press, not even the investors, wanted to wake up. The pressure was unbearable. Michael's investors turned against him. They saw only losses, not logic. Emails poured in, accusations, threats, demands. Men who once praised him now called him delusional. They didn't understand the bets, the structure, or the timing. They saw only money bleeding out. Michael held fast, but his health began to deteriorate. His eye twitched involuntarily. He stopped speaking during meetings. His staff avoided his gaze. Even his family noticed the change. The genius was unraveling, under siege from the very people he was trying to protect. And still, he would not back down. To stop the bleeding, Michael did the unthinkable. He locked his fund. No redemptions. No exits. His investors were trapped, furious, stunned. "You can't do this," they shouted. But he could. And he did. Because he knew the crash was near. If he let them pull out now, they'd miss everything. Still, the cost was brutal. He lost friends, trust, even his peace. Each day, he opened his inbox to new firestorms. The loneliness grew unbearable. But Michael believed the truth would vindicate him. He was no longer chasing profit. He was protecting a position the world refused to see, until it broke. The market began shifting, but not in his favor. Despite rising defaults, the instruments tied to them weren't crashing. It didn't make sense. The banks were mispricing, manipulating, resisting collapse. Michael knew what they were doing, marking positions to fantasy, delaying the reckoning. His profits should have surged. Instead, they stalled. He called the banks. He sent letters. He argued over pricing. But no one cared. They were stalling reality. Wall Street wasn't just ignoring the fire. They were throwing smoke bombs. He had made the right bet, but the system wasn't ready to pay up. Not yet. Michael's personal life took a hit. He became reclusive, even paranoid. Calls went unanswered. He stopped attending family events. The weight of his decision isolated him. His wife watched silently as he spiraled deeper into solitude. The world outside still danced in ignorant joy, while inside he was waiting for collapse. The man who bet everything now had nothing but numbers, data, and an unwavering belief that he was right. The pressure was so sharp it could split bone. He wasn't just fighting banks anymore. He was fighting the fear that maybe, just maybe, he had gone too far. And then, silence. Not externally, but within. Michael stopped explaining. No. He shut off the noise. He trusted the numbers and let the world catch up. It wasn't madness. It was resolve. Every insult, every doubt, every sleepless night, they all narrowed into a single point of certainty. The world had mocked him. The markets had punished him. His peers had betrayed him. But he stayed. Because the truth was this: when you're the only one who sees the iceberg, it doesn't matter if the orchestra keeps playing. You just head for the lifeboat and wait. It began slowly, then all at once. Mortgage delinquencies spiked. Homeowners started missing payments. Then foreclosures surged. Within weeks, the illusion cracked. Bond ratings dropped like stones. News anchors no longer smiled. Panic set in. Across the country, entire neighborhoods emptied. Banks began to wobble. Michael watched from his screen, lips tight, breath still. This was it. The math had arrived. His credit default swaps exploded in value. Every dollar he'd bled now returned like a tidal wave. For a moment, the world stood still, then screamed. The collapse had begun, just as he'd predicted. And there was no stopping it. Bear Stearns collapsed. Then, Lehman Brothers. Trillions evaporated in days. It was the greatest financial meltdown since 1929. Wall Street turned frantic. Phones rang endlessly. Traders screamed. But Michael Burry, he remained calm. His models had already shown this ending. Every number aligned. He didn't cheer. He didn't blink. He simply sent an email. Sell everything. He liquidated positions at the peak of chaos. His funds' value skyrocketed. The very system that mocked him now burned before his eyes. It was the sound of reality crashing into arrogance. And he had predicted it, down to the quarter. Investors who once doubted him now cold in awe. You saved us, some said. How did you know? Others asked. But Michael didn't answer. He had nothing left to prove. Over $700 million in profits now sat under his control. His fund had returned nearly 500%, at what? And yet, he felt no joy. Vindication, yes. Relief, maybe. But not victory. Well, this wasn't a game. The cost was too high. Families destroyed. Trust broken. The world crippled by greed's blindfold. While others scrambled for safety, he prepared to step away. He had walked through fire. And now, he was ready to leave it behind. The headlines praised him, reluctantly. The man who saw it coming. But they missed the truth. This wasn't about brilliance. It was about listening to what others ignored. He never wanted fame. He wanted accuracy. The silence he endured wasn't noble. It was necessary. When systems are built on lies, truth sounds insane. But now, with the collapse undeniable, they all turned to him. Reporters, analysts, documentarians. Everyone wanted a quote, a soundbite. Michael gave none. His work was done. The fire had revealed the rot, and he would not dance on the ashes. Michael Burry closed Skyen Capital in 2008. He returned investor funds, with no speeches, no celebrations. Then he disappeared. No one knew where he went. He left behind no legacy dinners, no books, no public memoir. Just a quiet exit. He had fought the most powerful financial forces in the world, and won. But at what cost? The wounds were internal. The trust shattered. The truth too heavy to carry any further. He had faced the storm alone. And when it passed, he chose not to stand in its sun, but to vanish into its shadow. In the aftermath, the world staggered. Governments rushed to rescue the banks. The public demanded answers. Protesters filled streets. But Michael Burry stayed silent. His fight was never for the spotlight. It was for clarity. He saw a system so addicted to greed that it ignored its own decay. And now the reckoning had come. Yet no one thanked him. No one apologized. The same experts who mocked him returned to the screens, spinning new narratives. Michael didn't argue. He quietly returned funds to his investors, closing Scion with a final letter. "I will not be investing your money anymore." His words were sharp, but never bitter. Just final. He withdrew from Wall Street. From interviews. That bitter Monday bite, or L. From noise. He moved away from cities, choosing solitude. For a while, no one heard from him. But behind the silence, he wasn't resting. He was watching. New bubbles were forming. New delusions rising. Housing was only the beginning. Financial memory, he believed, was tragically short. Systems rebuild faster than minds heal. And while others celebrated recovery, Michael studied numbers. Again. He had seen too much to forget. And though he no longer managed money, he hadn't stopped thinking. Or warning. He began speaking again, but not to Wall Street. Instead, he wrote rare open letters. Posted on small forums. Quietly revealed red flags he saw emerging. Student debt. Passive investing distortions. Inflation, blind spots. He wasn't chasing fame. He was warning, again. But the world had moved on. The big short guy, they called him, as if his clarity was a trick of timing. They still didn't get it. He didn't predict a collapse, he studied one into existence. And now he was doing it again. Watching. Calculating. Waiting. He wasn't without regret. Michael later admitted he should have spoken louder. Fought harder. Exposed more. Maybe lives would have changed. But he also knew the truth. Sometimes, even when you scream, the world is too deaf to hear. His pain wasn't about money. It was the emotional scar of knowing millions suffered for a truth he tried to tell. He carried that weight alone. And though he won the trade, he lost something else, faith in collective wisdom. What remains, he believed, is individual responsibility. And a deep, quiet hope that next time, maybe someone listens sooner. Michael Burry didn't become a billionaire. He didn't build an empire. He didn't take a victory lap. What he did was more rare. He saw the lie, proved it, and walked away. In a world built on spectacle, he remained substance. To this day, he occasionally emerges, sometimes with cryptic tweets, sometimes with bold warnings. And when he speaks, those who remember 2008 stop and listen. Because they know. He doesn't bluff. He doesn't chase noise. He simply sees. And what he sees next, that's the question no one dares to ignore. Time marched forward, but Michael Burry remained still, like a figure trapped between decades. He didn't return to fund management. He didn't launch a media tour. He returned to silence. But silence from him was never empty. It was calculation. Occasionally, he emerged online, briefly, cryptically. A single tweet. Sell. A one-word post. Danger. And it echoed across the markets like thunder. Not because of what he said, but because of who he was. Every word from him was treated as a siren. He didn't chase attention. It found him. Because the man who bet against the world was watching again. And when he watches, the wise listen. Not to be trendy, but to survive. Because when he stares at the numbers long enough, something always cracks. Michael Burry never wanted legacy. Legacy was noise. His currency was clarity. After 2008, The world gave him a title, the big short guy. But that wasn't who he was. He didn't predict the crisis. He proved it. Slowly. Methodically. Brutally. And now, he does the same again. But quieter. Not for profit. Not for fame. Just for truth. He watches ETFs grow into beasts. He sees leverage piled high. He sees signals in patterns no one else reads. To him, markets are living organisms. And today, they're bloated, overfed, and unbalanced. He doesn't yell. He just observes. When it breaks, he won't say, "I told you so." He'll simply move on. Like he did before. To win doesn't always feel like triumph. Michael knew that better than anyone. He didn't celebrate the crash. He grieved it. Every profit came from someone's foreclosure. Every correct model meant someone's ruin. He saw the underbelly of the machine, and couldn't unsee it. He didn't smile when Lehman fell. He stared unblinking. He didn't feel rich. He felt alone. Vindication became isolation. Truth became burden. In interviews, he appeared distant, measured. Not because he was cold, but because he remembered. He remembered being mocked, dismissed, ignored. And now being right felt empty. Because what good is being right if the world still refuses to listen? He walks alone, not out of exile, but by choice. The road to truth isn't crowded. After Sion, he vanished. Moved away from the coasts. Turned down interviews. He shut the door to noise. But solitude didn't mean surrender. It meant clarity. From his cabin he studied markets again. New debt bubbles. Ignored inflation. Fragile geopolitics. He watched investors celebrate shallow gains. He watched regulators turn blind eyes again. It was all too familiar. The cycle had restarted. And yet, once again, no one was listening. But Michael didn't scream this time. He just walked. Alone. Toward the next storm. While everyone else stood smiling under a clear sky. No one listened. Those 3 words, written by Michael Burry, now haunt the financial world. More than a quote, they are a warning. The world didn't fail because it lacked the truth. It failed because it didn't want the truth. And today, the truth is knocking again. The signs are there. But few want to see. Fewer want to act. Michael Burry doesn't argue anymore. He posts. He watches. He waits. Because he knows how this ends. It always ends the same. First, the bubble. Then the bravado. Then, the silence. And in that silence, a glow. A single monitor. A single chart. A single eye. Still watching.